Our next speaker, Enge, deserves to be a keynote in his own right. And shame on me and the Confluence team for not finding a keynote spot for him. But I've explained this to him, and he's okay with it. But just so you know, he literally wrote the book on SEO, The Art of SEO, with a foreword by Fishkin. It's coming out in its 3rd edition. I know that a lot of you, I think it's 14% of you, work for educational institutions. Yeah, I know, right? I know you guys. I've done my homework. And they literally use this as a textbook in universities now. So if you're interested in SEO, that book is a great place to begin and carry on, quite frankly. Eric is the founder of Stone Temple Consulting. It is an SEO and digital marketing agency looking after enterprise clients and some smaller. He's going to talk about content marketing through some pretty exciting stuff that I've been privy to. So hands together, please, for Enge.
All right, thank you. All right, great. Thank you, everybody. You've heard some stuff earlier today about why you should design a really good experience for users on your site and ways to do that. I'm actually going to talk a bit about why you should do it and why it's such a big deal to Google. And so that's why I'm calling this topic Content Effectiveness as a Ranking Factor. So you already got the background on me, so I'm going to skip that, except I'm going to show you this slide. For those of you who don't know, in 1984, I was world champion in goalie war for foosball. So I always have some trepidation when I show this slide because it really seriously dates me, and I get that part of it. But if you do need to win a bar bet tonight, I'm still your guy, okay? So we can set that up. Anybody play out there, by the way? Yeah, so okay, at least one guy. One that's willing to admit it. So there. But with that, I'm going to give you a little background on what I mean when I talk about content effectiveness. And the first question you want to ask yourself is, what percentage of users are happy with the experience on your site? You have heard other speakers talk about this kind of stuff. And let's imagine 70%, which, by the way, would be an extraordinarily high figure. But then the next question is, what if it's a lower number? What if it's only 60% and your competitor is getting 70% satisfaction? To Google, that might be a ranking factor, and this is what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about today and why that's so important. Because this is the way I want you to start thinking. Because we have so many ways we've thought about Google over the years, and so many different things that we do. We do keyword research, we do link building, now we call it content marketing and all these kinds of other things. So little of that thought was focused on what is the satisfaction level of the users, and it matters a lot to Google. I'm going to explain why. So as you dig into this, think about the notion of task completion. Somebody comes to your site on some search term and they're looking for some product, in this case oil filters. Well, okay, some of those people actually want oil filters, but there's a lot of other things they're likely to want too. They might want a manual to make sure they're buying the right oil filter, a manual for their car, right? They might want to buy oil. They might need an oil filter wrench. These are very basic things that they may also need. And if all you do is dump them on a page where they get an oil filter, you might not be satisfying their entire task. Their task is changing their oil at this point, right? Not just to buy an oil filter, most likely. So, as you think about this, I want to show you a sample search session. This is data that I got directly from Bing, actually a few years back, but it's still relevant today. It's showing a sample search query session for somebody. So they came in on Merrill shoes, and they ended up visiting all these different websites before they finally went to one and spent 27 minutes there and made a purchase. Why did it take so many sites? The second site here is Merrill shoes. I would bet that Merrill Shoes sells Merrill shoes. So, but something was missing in all those experiences. And all of these are e-commerce sites, and finally they settled on one and went with it. So, and now here I'm stealing a slide actually from Rand Fishkin's closing keynote at MozCon in Seattle back in July, just to show that he has a similar thought process for how this might work. And you know, here Google wants to send searchers to places where people resolve their mission. It's the same concept that I'm talking about here of task completion. Okay, there we go. Okay, next up, I have some data for you, which is from studies that both Google and Bing did. These are almost 5 years old now, where they did some stuff. Oh, the fly is a little extra bonus. Sorry about that. So they did a study where they introduced small delays in returning the search results, anywhere between 50 milliseconds and 2 full seconds. And they measured things to see what would happen with click-through rate, number of repeat searches they did, whether they clicked on ads, their satisfaction level. These are all things that they measured. And they found very tiny changes in speed would actually dramatically affect these metrics. And so this explains, among other things, Google's obsession with speed. But the reason why I'm showing it to you now is you could imagine that a delay in returning a page is comparable to having, well, a lower level of satisfaction, right? A lower level of, with the overall user experience. And it hits you in the pocket. So this is Google and Bing discovering that satisfaction with their product impacts their revenue, right? And the next leap that I'm going to ask you to make is that if Google sends you to a search page and it's a crappy experience, they send you a page and then you click on the first result or the second result and that page is a crappy experience, that reflects on their product. And this is the core concept, right? They want you to have a good experience with their search results because it increases their revenue. It's that simple at the end of the day. And you know, when you think about this, I mentioned Bing a moment ago, and you could say, well, I mean, gosh, if people aren't happy with Google, where are they going to go? Not that many people use Bing. They're not going to rush off and start using Bing because they don't really have a major direct competitor. But Bing isn't the only competitor. Facebook, Amazon, Apple, by the way, the size of these bubbles are supposed to imply the level of how much of a competitor someone is. They're actually bigger competitors. If the Google search doesn't work, you're going to call your friend, right? You're going to go to Facebook and jump on that and try to get your answer there. So these are things that Google thinks about all the time. And you know, at the end of the day, you think about another thing that people used to do with search, web pages a while back. They used to build pages that look somewhat like what I call my buy now or leave page. Clearly, that's a good user experience, right? You know, this is not the experience people are looking for. So, having given you this little bit of background, I want to talk a little bit about some mechanics now about what Google might be measuring, right? First of all is the notion of a short click. Somebody clicks on the first page in the results or some page in the results. They visit that page. They spend a very short period of time, and then they bounce back to the search results and click on a different page. You could imagine that that might be a ranking factor. It might reflect badly on that page where the user spent very little time, and then they go to the next page in the results of some other page, and they don't come back for a long time. Actually, I'll talk about that more in a little bit. Then there's the notion of a long click, where they go to the page and maybe they don't come back, right? That kind of implies a satisfaction level. So if I'm the third person in the results and everybody who clicks on my page goes to it and they spend a long time there, that's going to look better than perhaps the second person in the results. A lot of the people do the short click where they're only there for a short period of time. That could help me move up the rankings. And there is some data to suggest that that might be the case. And then the last scenario here is pogo sticking, which is actually the one I described first. The way I described it is that's where they do a short click on one page, and then they go to another page and disappear, right? They don't come back, or they spend a long time there. And there's a lot of people who believe that this concept of pogo sticking is a direct ranking factor. But I don't think there's any actual proof of that at this point. But ultimately, if you go back to my opening thesis, satisfying a lot of people, a large percentage of users, is very complex. And I made up, this is an artificial spreadsheet, by the way, it's not based on real data, but I think the concept is very true. Someone searches on oil filters, and I said this, I'm just gonna make sure I didn't click ahead by accident there. You know, some of them want oil filters, of course, but you know, windshield wipers, they want that. But they want other things. They want a way to buy. They want to see a privacy policy because they're going to be giving you credit card information. They want to see about us information. They want a little background on the company. You know, a lot of different things. They might want a video on how to do an installation of an oil filter. I mean, if I'm a user and that's my need, I know I'm going to change an oil filter today, and I've never done it before, I want a how-to of some sort to help me. That's what helps me complete my task, right? And create a situation where I get either, where I get a long click. Somebody clicks through to my page, and they stay there for a long period of time. And, you know, and ultimately, what I'm trying to get across to you is if you do that more than your competitor, Google will like that. When your customer is satisfied, when your visitor is satisfied, Google will be satisfied with that as well. So here's what I call content effectiveness optimization. Practice of tuning your web pages to satisfy a larger percentage of visitors. Something that you really need to think about. By the way, this is beyond design. It's like it takes into account content on the page, the offerings, other pages that you link to. If I'm selling windshield wipers on my site and oil filters and someone comes in on oil filters, I'm not going to sell the windshield wipers on the same page. I'm going to have a link to a page where you can buy windshield wipers. So let's just take a look at a sample page. This is actually from Home Depot. If you look on the phrase refrigerators here, they rank #1 for this. And gosh, let's take a look at why that might be. Well, here's the page. Obviously, having a strong brand helps a lot. You can't get around that. If somebody believes in your brand and knows your brand name, okay, they're going to give you a little bit more of a benefit of doubt than someone else. But if you don't have a strong brand, you can't manufacture that overnight. But if we pick apart the page a little bit, they can pick a type of refrigerators, a free delivery offering. There's financing options, ways to ship to store or home. You can actually go for immediate pickup. They have broader categories over here on the left, common refinements of refrigerators over here, and related other categories over here. And you know, that's a lot of ground being covered on a single web page. They've put a lot of thought into how you do a good job satisfying a large percentage of users. Let's talk about how you can go about doing the analysis. Well, the first thing you have to do is really start thinking about what your page is trying to do. Start thinking through what I've talked about for each of your major pages, how you design a page that handles or satisfies a large array of needs, and take the concept of task completion. What's the user's real task into account? And then you also want to brainstorm with your internal team about this. You know, bring in as many people as you can, and also get on the phone or get in front of customers or do surveys or whatever you need to do in order to get more input from actual customers. These are all parts of, you know, and asking them, when they come to your page and something that they've entered in, what really is the task they're trying to complete? You really do want to cover all of this ground. And then one more thing. Now I'm going to get a bit more technical, but it may seem like cheating, but there is a way to mine the top 10 results of Google's searches for ideas from your competition. We all like to steal ideas from our competition, right? So, and so here's a massive spreadsheet that we've put together for, what movie is that? Who knows? Somebody's got to know. Ryan Reynolds, Helen Mirren. Nobody knows? Okay, yeah, thank you. I don't remember. I didn't remember, I should say. But in any case, this is actually a literal dump of the phrases on the pages in the top 5 positions for that search phrase, the name of the movie. And you'll see that on that page, the star actors are on there. There's a lot of other words on there, wide variety of different things. But it turns out that we had somebody whose page we were helping, trying to help them rank for this movie, and they didn't have the two lead actors listed on the page they were trying to rank, and yet every one of the competitors, of course, mentioned their names very prominently. But the point is that if you use a thing called a keyword density tool, you can actually get a dump of all the phrases used on a page, and you can use that and throw it into a spreadsheet like this and compare what you see on your page with what other people are using on their pages. So I'll give you an example. We had a major client that had a page about annuals, type of flower, right? And on that page, using this analysis idea, we discovered that they didn't mention the word perennials. That doesn't make sense, right? The person who's out to buy annuals might be in the process for shopping for flowers, just a guess. And if you want an annual, you might want a perennial also, and there's other things that you might want. But what happened is our client, in that case, with the flowers page, was not doing a good job of addressing task completion. And we helped make a change for them and some other changes on their page and got pretty good results. But you can mine the phraseology and the words used on your competitors' pages to help you understand what content you should have on your page, particularly when you're looking at your competitors who Google has decided to rank in the top 10. Google has decided they like that page. Now, don't get me wrong, things like links and other factors are still really big factors. I'm not trying to tell you that this is the only factor in Google's search results. It isn't. But what I am trying to tell you is that it is a factor. So, for those of you interested in the Gory Math, hold up your hands. Did I get any? Oh, so I got one volunteer. So that's the Gory Math. You don't need to know this math here today, but the only reason why I show it is that you're probably all heard about keyword density and the way people did SEO 5 or 10 years ago, where you just stuffed more instances of a word on a page to make that page seem more important. Well, in the new way that Google analyzes content, yes, your page will be seen more as important for a phrase as you, increase the number of uses within limits, but only slightly more important. So if you have a page that uses a phrase 10 times versus one that uses a phrase once, it might only be seen as 1.8 times more important for that phrase rather than 10 times more important. So I just put this up there, so if you're familiar with keyword density the way it used to be thought about, the reality is that it's not really quite the same thing I'm talking about. So ultimately, what term frequency, this part of the analysis, tells us is which phrase on a page carries the most weight. One other part to this that I want to show you, and that is, I already talked about that, so I'm going to skip that. There's another thing called inverse document frequency. This is a different kind of metric, and again, you don't have to worry about the formula here. But The idea is to see if I have a phrase on my page, Helen Reynolds, I think was the name, or maybe it was Helen Mirren, whatever. There's my memory. But anyway, on your page, search engines will look at how many pages across the entire web use that term. So if you're one of 1,000 pages across the entire web, that makes you a pretty rare web page, right? If you're the only one to use that particular term. And search engines care about what terms uniquely distinguish your page from the rest of the web. They care about that. And by the way, those are easy ranking opportunities if you're ranking for pages that most of the web doesn't use. And it tells them what makes your page unique. So these two concepts together are called TF-IDF. And it's something that search engines use as a fundamental part of their algorithms. So some of the things to do, you've already heard people talk to you about usability and design today. You definitely want to invest in that. Here's a tool called Attention Wizard. Really great tool for getting a heat map of where people's eyeballs go on your web page. It's from a site called Site Tuners, although it's attentionwizard.com. So you should explore this. It will actually give you a visual view of where those eyes are going, which is great stuff. And you can use usertesting.com, another site where you can actually have users come to your site, get a video of what they do and what their reactions are and what their feedback is for your pages. Another great way to collect input. And then, of course, you should measure actual levels of engagement. Things like bounce rate and time on site and page views per visitor and what percentage of your visitors are new versus returning. Things that you can do to improve these metrics are, generally speaking, good stuff. So, basically here's an SEO checklist for things to think about if you're trying to improve your page quality and overall user satisfaction with your pages. And if you do a good job with this set of metrics, you're well on your way to taking a step forward in advanced SEO. Also doing A/B split testing, another really good thing to do. So with that, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
I would like to open this up to Q&A from the audience. Since we're a little bit behind, I'll axe out my terrible questions. Go straight to you guys.
All right.
Any questions? Sir, in the back.
The eye tracking tool, I mean, sure.
Oh, sorry.
Whatever field look for yay, look at certain words, I guess that's what's the end all of that? Using that tracking tool.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. First of all, it's a really good way to just model user behavior on a site, and a really good thing to do. There's a desire from a conversion perspective to see that they're getting to your call to action, and that actually is a good thing. But you want to be careful, because if you over-optimize just on getting to the call to action, you may have a lot of people who are bailing without actually getting any level of satisfaction, still sending negative signals. So just increasing your conversion rate doesn't always increase average user satisfaction. I don't have a simple answer, actually. There's a lot of context needed to answer it precisely, but think of it as a way to understand what's happening on your page. And something that I didn't mention, and probably could have, you can also use mouse tracking software to see users' mouse behavior on your page, and that gives you a lot of visibility to what they're seeing and where they're going. So if you're seeing erratic behavior and where users are traveling about your page, that might not be a good thing.
Any other questions for Eric? Madam.
Do you have a resource that you recommend to learn more about the TF-IDF?
So there's a really good article written by Cyrus Shepard on advanced on-page SEO that talks a little bit about TF-IDF. That's on the Moz.com blog. And I also write a monthly column for Moz.com. And I wrote one article on term frequency, a complete article, in which, by the way, I included a spreadsheet, which you can actually use to do your own TF-IDF analysis. And I wrote a different article on IDF. So if you look for my column there, you'll find it. It's just a few months back.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Any more?
When you said to uniquely distinguish your page, did you mean with keywords? Because I feel like if you have like a keyword that's too unique, then it won't get very many hits.
How do you uniquely distinguish your page?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. So, of course, there's a little bit of art and science to finding those keywords where there's a useful volume, right, that other people aren't competing for, right, that makes it more unique. So there's work to doing it, but it really is a great way. If you put in that work, you have a strong chance of finding opportunities where, hey, this might only be 10% of the volume of the main keyword for the page, but I'm struggling in position 9 for the main keyword or on page 3, yeah, and I can get into the top 5 on this secondary keyword pretty quickly. And what makes that so powerful is when you're trying to build up an SEO program, if you're not getting out of the gates yet, right, to take that second level keyword and win on it is kind of a big deal, because if you start making a little money on your SEO, it gets a little easier to keep investing. Does that make sense?
And we're talking about SEO and content. How important or how much of the traffic that you see to your content is driven by SEO?
So in terms of me personally?
Well, yeah, I suppose the general, for our audience's purposes,
yeah.
How much of an opportunity is SEO to get their content seen?
Yeah, well, it varies by industry a lot. There's a lot of industries where it's the #1 opportunity. I mean, you compare traffic that goes to organic search clicks versus paid search clicks, and it's still, you know, I don't know, 4 or 5 to 1 in favor of organic clicks, and it's a huge opportunity for sure.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Eric. And
all right. Thank you, David.